to rage, to hilarity, to a chuckle, to a tear, and then write a song with yourself as either a participant in that story or an eyewitness. And this does several things for us. It takes us out of our own boring lives into the whole world. The whole world then becomes the stuff of our songs. We are, as Shakespeare says, holding the mirror up to nature. We are writing of our own passing time. We can write as a participant or as an eyewitness. And this gets us out of ourselves and our goddamn relationship songs. We have too many of them as it is. Now, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to do the whole song, but I wrote a song about 9/11. I didn't want to write this song, but the chorus came to me and said, write this down, goddammit, and then write verses to go with it. And so this is the first part of the song. I was not at 9/11. The first plane hit the other tower right after I came in. Left a fiery gaping hole where officers had been. We stood and watched in horror as we saw the first ones fall. Then someone yelled, get out, they're trying to kill us all. I grabbed the pictures from my desk and joined the flight for life. With every step I called the names of my children and my wife. And then we heard them coming up from several floors below. A crowd of firefighters with their heavy gear in tow. Now every time I try to sleep, I'm haunted by the sound of firemen pounding up the stairs while we were running down. So, if by now you believe, I'm sure you believe, that whoever is telling this story was there. And that's why I say don't write what you know, write what you can imagine. Imagine yourself in the middle of something like one of the towers.
So in the context of inspiration, I'd like to ask about your song. And what inspired you? You already talked a little bit about the Marvelous Toy. You said you wrote that on a
Army typewriter.
How that came up. Also leaving London and Louise. I've always been interested about Louise.
Ooh, I don't even remember how Louise went. Louise.
Coming in to see Louise.
Well, it's true. I write in the first person almost always, but it's almost never myself whose story I'm telling.
Mm-hmm.
But I find the first person singular to be the most immediate, the most immediate voice. But it's almost never Tom who's saying that. For example, that one, I was never near the towers. Although a guy came up to me after a show one day and said, I was in the tower and you got it right. That took my breath away. But I'm talking now about technique, how we write. I suggest the first person, although it really doesn't have to be you, and probably shouldn't be. Because we as individuals are not terribly interesting to the rest of humanity. You know, we'd like to think we are, but we're not. But stories told in that voice can be very compelling, especially in song. I mean, I'm not talking about short stories or novels. Yes, question.
I have a question. You were talking about writing a lyric down and then forgetting about it. I wrote a song called Don't Run Me Over, which is a parody of Hey Look Me Over, and it's about pedestrians. I was wondering if I'm writing about what I know from the standpoint of trying to cross the street, I'm using that to not just say, about me, but about other
Sure.
bicyclists and
You know, and it depends on how you want to treat that. You can write a humorous song.
Well, I
You
wrote
know, don't run me over,
I wrote
goddammit.
a humorous song, and I consider it to be not just about me as a pedestrian, but I'm saying to all drivers, hey, look out for bicyclists. Everyone's
Exactly.
cyclists.
You're right. You're right.
You know, respect us because.
And you had a question down here, yeah.
Yeah, have you ever had any experiences with someone that's a gifted lyricist but was not comfortable singing those songs, would present it to someone else that could, and how
Yeah.
that process came about? Have you ever?
Well, if you're a lyricist, you obviously need a composer. And how do you find that composer? I say by getting around. Getting around whatever town you're in, wherever the music is being made, hang out there. And when you hear someone whose melodies you like, say, are you interested in setting someone else's words? It's much more easily done in a place like Nashville, where there's music all over the place. You can hear. I mean, you guys can speak to that question about how to find a composer.
I want to add one thing, though, about what Tom said about the first person. He says he seldom writes about himself, but I'm not going to argue that point. But I will tell you that I don't think he could have written that song if he hadn't felt the same horror that we all felt when we watched it. So there is a part of him in all of those songs. I guarantee it. There's a part of all of us.
Oh, sure.
We tap into that emotion that strikes us. Donna has a wonderful song about Martin Luther King. And, you know, I remember that. He taps into that emotion. Somebody said, this guy once said, you know, if you don't feel anything, how do you expect somebody else to feel something? Case in point, the paper, we have these friends, Alan Shamblin and Mike Reed. And one day, they were going to write, and they went, Alan told me the story. He went over to Mike's, and he said, they didn't have anything to write, and he said, you know, I read this story about this homeless guy, and his wife had left him and all that stuff, and basically he said in there, I can't make her love me if she don't. Well, they wrote I Can't Make You Love Me, which started out as a bluegrass song. You're talking about I can't make you love me. That's the way they wrote it. And then one day, as we all do, we'll sit down, pick up a different instrument. You know, we might write it on the guitar or something, and it takes on a whole new. And Mike just slowed it down. That's all he did. And I mean, that's one of the best songs ever written, in my estimation. So I think that, you know, the other thing is Tom writes a lot of. We all write some topical songs. Tom writes a lot of topical songs. And the thing about this is a really important thing. He writes it in terms of him. He doesn't write in terms of you. In other words, he doesn't cast the blame on somebody else or say, you should do this or you should do that. He puts it on the first person. Because if you don't do that, if you start pointing your fingers and all that stuff, what you're gonna get is you're gonna get the people that agree with you going, yeah, and the other people are gonna go, bananas, bananas, bananas. He's got a great song called If the Poor Don't Matter, Then Neither Do I. It says it all. That's all I got.
Well, you're a lyricist, I take it, maybe? Just primarily a lyricist?
No, actually more of an instrumentalist.
Oh, okay. Well, then your question was about just...
Well, I have some lyrics that I could...
Yeah. Well, you know, this kind of an event is where you tap into a network of people who do what you don't do. So one of the first places I start is these kinds of things. You know, and start a network page on Facebook that just includes this group of people, and find people who, you know, do what you don't do and co-write with them. So that, I mean, that's pretty basic, but it's hard sometimes in our little worlds we live in to find capable people to collaborate with. But here we all are. So I don't know how many of y'all know each other, but it's about time you did.
And somebody said to me early on, if you're going to co-write, write up. In other words, write with somebody, you have to kind of set your ego aside and try to write with somebody that you think is better, or you really at least admire their work, and write different. I mean, I'm married to a singer named Kathy Mattea. I heard her, we were dating at the time, and I heard this record, and I heard a song on there, and it was Don, and Don had written it with, who'd you write with?
Dennis Wilson,
Yeah,
who
Dennis
is not
Wilson.
the Dennis Wilson you might think, but
Great
he's a
background singer.
He's a genius background singer who sang on just about every session for like 30 years in Nashville.
Yeah, and a really good writer, and I love this song. So then I heard the demo, and I just found his number and I called him up. I'm not afraid of doing that. I'm saying, you don't know me. I just moved to town. I don't have shit to offer you, but I like what you did. And we wrote.
That's actually, you're touching on a terribly important point. And that is, depending on how serious about songwriting you are, you need to be living in either Los Angeles, Nashville, or New York. And I'm not Chicago, not Detroit, although Detroit, if you're writing black. But you need to be where it's going on. You need to be rubbing shoulders with people like yourself who love songwriting and are serious about it. You need to, it's a full immersion deal. If we're talking about aspirations for really writing songs professionally, you have to be where the profession is practiced. So you can call someone up.
You bet.
Who is a professional. And you can't do that in Tulsa.
But in the meantime, you can, the Nashville Songwriters Association has chapters all over. Or you can here start your own group and have song circles and critique sessions where you play songs for each other and get them outside of yourself. You have, take names.
Well, I was interested in your comment earlier there's always a dilemma between what Tom mentioned, the quality control and the repeatability of inspiration. So sometimes I sit down at the piano and kind of know instantly she'll drop something, and I'll know within a few seconds if I haven't got anything worthwhile. I could churn out maybe 4 or 5 songs, but you know it's not really great stuff, you know stuff that you're doing, but it's always difficult to maintain quality control and volume at the same time.
Thank you. Oh, hi. Yeah, I had to hit the reject button because I'm in a songwriting class right now. Can I call you back? Oh, okay. We should be done about 12. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Right. And they were really each more confident. Bad song, after a while they get a little better. And you don't even, I don't know if you even are aware of how much better they are, because writers love everything they're currently doing. So, but then, you listen to comparison and you see yourself getting a little better. Well, we refer to that in a lot of circles as acquiring the tools of songwriting, of how to get to something a little quicker than you used to be able to. Every time you do it, that gets easier and easier to find that path. So by the time I found my own voice, or the thing that was uniquely me, I had been in Nashville for about 10 years by then, and I saw that movie Gandhi, and it occurred to me how to write the song about Martin Luther King, and it just came right out in one shot. And that was because of all those years of writing constantly writing a lot of bad songs to learn how to write